Okay, here it is, guys. We're in the last one. And, you know, generally you like to do all the heavy work, all the heavy lifting to begin with, right? But they've given us a big load today, 15. So that means that we're not going to be able to hit in any real depth on them. But I don't know if you had a chance or not to look at them and read through them. But these are the ones that people seem to like. You know, to memorize, seem to be seem to touch lives in areas that are important, and so it wasn't like it wasn't like you're reading Psalm 119. Some of them are pretty short, like 3 verses, but so these are good. Because of our time limit, you're not going to be able to read all of them, but hopefully if there's something there that you're interested in or something like that, we can touch on it. Okay. Now, if you read the book, he gave a pretty good introduction about this, but these are what are called the Psalms of Ascent. All Hebrew men were required to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year for the great feasts. Now, the first one is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And something is tied with that. Do you remember what it is? Passover. Passover is the very first day, and then the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the week that follows Passover. And of course, there was the issue of making sure there's no leaven in your house. And if you ever get a chance to maybe pick up some literature and look at that, that's really, really an interesting process where they kind of go through and the whole family's looking for leaven, and they leave just a little bit out for the kids to find, and there's a special spoon and a feather used to dust it off, and then there's a ceremony called the nullification, where the man of the house, the father of the family, states that as far as he knows, as far as he's aware, there is no leaven in the house, and if by chance there might be some, he nullifies it. And so they do that. So they have a week when they're supposed to be completely without leaven, and leaven is a biblical symbol of sin. So it's kind of a week of purification, if you will. And then they have the week of feasts. Does that one ring any bells to you? Feast of Weeks or Feast of, I said Feast of Feast, I think. Feast of Weeks. Does that one ring any bells to you? That's Pentecost, and that happens 7 weeks after Passover, 49 days, and on the 50th day you have the Pentecost. And of course, that's a big feast for us too, right? That's the birthday of the church. And then you have the Feast of Tabernacles, or booths, or shelters. And the net effect of that feast is to remind the children of Israel that in the Exodus they lived in tents and shelters and those types of things, and that the Lord provided for them. So those 3 feasts, each man was required to go. Now, women could go, and children as well. We know that Joseph and Mary took Jesus to one of the feasts in Luke, I guess it's in Luke, yeah. And that's where he stayed behind, and they had to come back and find him. So it could be a family thing. Men were required to go, women not so much. Okay, but it happened. As the religious pilgrims began their final leg on the trip, they would begin in Jerusalem and begin in Jericho and climb to Jerusalem. Okay? Now, there's a 3,546 foot difference in elevation. Jerusalem is about 2,700 feet above sea level, and Jericho is 846 and a half feet below sea level, and it's not too far from the lowest spot on Earth, the Dead Sea. Not that far away. Okay, now the distance of this trip, at least on a modern day trip, is 22 miles. So what does that mean? Well, that means on the average incline, it's an increase of 161 feet per mile. So which doesn't, I don't know, 61 feet, that's a pretty good incline. And so that's what we're talking about. Now, I know Janet remembers it. You may remember it. Remember we went to Mohechi's, that little village down with the river that was running through it? When we lived in Curitiba?
Where they turned the bowl upside down.
Where they turned the bowl upside down, you ate that special dish. That's like going from there to Curitiba. Remember going up to the mountains? And it's about the same amount of distance. And so to give you an idea, it's not something that's, it's not a trifle. It's a significant elevation, and it's a significant trip. Now, but the trip was not 22 miles. It was more like 60 miles. So even though we climbed the mountain in the car to get there, that was a lot. Yeah, that was a lot longer expanse than what we're talking about here. Okay. Now during this trip, a set of psalms was sung by the pilgrims. Apparently, some say that when they start off, they sing psalm, and then the last one that we're looking at, now 134, that they would sing that one before at the feast as they're about to leave. So it's not like one after another they'd do it, but in the trip time, they would do all these things. Okay, because they're going up. That's why it's called the Psalms of Ascent. Now, of these Psalms, 15 of them, David authored 4, Solomon authored 1, and 10 were anonymous. So what I want to do is give you, as we go through these, kind of a simple outline. For those of you taking notes, you might want to use that. I lean heavily on the MacArthur Study Bible for this information. So if you have one of those, you can go and find these outlines from that source. Okay. Now, Psalm 120. 120. Now, this psalm is interesting to me in that the people singing it are headed to Jerusalem. What does the name Jerusalem mean? Do you know? Well, Salem we know means peace. So it's a form of shalom. And Jerusalem means city of peace. City of peace. All right, that's what it means. They're headed to the city of peace, but they're in anything but peace. They're in fact, in the land of conflict. Now it talks about Meshesh and Kedar in here. In verse 5, Meshesh was the grandson of Noah. He was the son of Japheth. And who came from Japheth? Do you know? Look at the person sitting beside you. So Europeans basically came from Japheth. Okay, that was his son. Kedar is the son of Ishmael. Okay, now, the author of our text, Brother Jerry, says that in Ezekiel, these two folks are identified with Gog and Magog. You don't have to be too deep into eschatology to know that there's some important things that are going to happen to those two, Gog and Magog, and there's a lot of things, interpretation about it, but basically, they're enemies of righteousness. Just basically, okay? Now, in areas geographically, this may represent Asia Minor for Meshesh, and then Arabia for Kedar, geographically. They are considered to be enemies, and the psalmist's description of them seems to indicate that they are warlike. What do they say? I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. So the indication seems to be that these are people that were warlike. Now there's ample indication that their lands are filled with lies and deception. Okay? There seems to be a contrast between the conflict of the land they are leaving and the peace of the city they are traveling to, Jerusalem. The tone of the psalm is a desire to be in God's presence, to enjoy the peace to be found there. Okay, now we don't know who the author is. It is an anonymous psalm. Now I'll give you a simple outline. And the first, it's got 3 points. The first is a petition that's found in verse 1 and verse 2. In my trouble I cried to the Lord. So there's your petition. Right? Then we have an indictment, and find that in 3 and 4. Okay, what shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you? You deceitful tongue. Okay, it's all about sharp arrows of a warrior, and burning coals, a broom tree. These are all indictments against the people. I told you that the context seems to be in anything but a peaceful type of situation. And this is an indictment against these people that are surrounding. And then a lament. Okay, woe is me, it says in verse 5. So we're looking at 5 through 7. A lament, however you want to pronounce that, where he's crying out for his situation. Once again, here we go. We see kind of a lament because he's in a situation that is not peaceful as he desires to be, but you're heading to a place where it is, a city of peace. Okay? So let's move on down to Psalm 121. Anybody have any questions on that one? All right. Psalm 121, the author of this one is anonymous as well, but this particular one is very memorable to me. What does he say? I'll lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where shall my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. All right. As a young pastor, in the first church that I was in, we had a woman who had cancer, and she passed away. And I happened to be there in her home and in a room with her when she passed away. And her brother-in-law was a Baptist pastor, Roe Lee. Maybe you remember him. Mom used to be pastor at Camp Pinckney before Dad was. And when she passed away, he was heavily touched with that, and he quoted this psalm verbatim in a prayer to the Lord. And a lot of times, this is how it's used. This is how it's used. It really does touch on some of the difficult emotions that we go through in life. So, I mean, how many of you ever been caught in a situation where you're wondering, well, who in the world is going to help me now? And so there you go. You know, you get in those situations like that in life. You know, health, finance, family matters, those types of things. And so this one really is a psalm that kind of, well, it does touch us where we hurt. And where shall my help come from? And where shall my help come? So and he's looking to the Lord. He's not curious. Okay. The song strikes a strong note of assurance in 4 stages that God is help and protection to keep both Israel and individual believers safe from harm. So we got here 4 points looking at this, and it's kind of descriptive of our relationship to the Lord in the sense of how does the Lord relate to me in these times of problems. Okay, the first one is God is helper. It says in verse 1 and 2, and where does my help come from? Okay, God is the helper. God is the keeper. Find that in 3 through 5a, the first part of verse 5. Okay, he who keeps you, what it says, and then in verse 5a, it says the Lord is your keeper. Look what it says. He who keeps you, he's neither slumber nor sleep. And I heard a story on the radio as I was driving to work this week, and I can't remember who it was, but there was some big-name preacher who's having insomnia, is having problems with that. And so he went to the Bible and he says, he read this, okay? He who keeps you will not slumber. He will neither slumber nor sleep. He said, well, Lord, since you're going to be awake anyway, I think I'll just give you my problems and turn in. And that seemed to work for him. He got his sleep. There you go. So he's your keeper. He's your keeper. God is protector, verse 5b through 6. All right? Now this is pretty interesting. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. And the Lord would protect you from all evil. Okay? He will keep your soul. So he is your protector. And then the last one we see is God as a preserver. You find that in verse 7 and 8. What does it say? It says, the Lord shall preserve your soul. And you thought you were doing it. No, you weren't. And no, you aren't. Okay? The Lord is the one who preserves and keeps your soul. Okay? Anything we have about this one? Okay, we're moving right along then. Psalm 122. Psalm 122. This was, like I said, here you go. Now, already we've seen 2 Psalms that you've heard about, right? And this is another one. I was glad when they said to me, let's go up to the house of the Lord. Of course, already you're looking at this. What is this? It's a song of ascent, right? And where are these people headed? Well, they're headed to the house of the Lord. Now, this is a song about Jerusalem, which expresses the great joy of David, who conquered it, and transformed it into the capital of Israel. Right? They thought that they could keep David out, but they didn't. He captured it from the Jebusites, and this is right on the border of the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah. I think actually it's within the tribe allotment of Benjamin, but Benjamin. Then you have Judah. Benjamin, Judah, and so numerically speaking, Judah was one of the larger tribes, if not the largest, and they had a tremendously large piece of property for their allotment. And so when the nation split at Solomon's death, I think Benjamin was kind of absorbed into the orbit of Judah, and they stayed with him. So really, David's descendants had 2 tribes, basically Benjamin and Judah, and then the other 10 went on up to the north. So when he got there, all right, you remember he did a census. Remember that story? And the Lord gave him 3 choices, and so he chose to fall into the hands of the Lord. And 70,000 men were slain by an angel, and the angel came to a particular place, and David called out to the Lord, and the Lord caused the angel to stay his hand. Okay, and so he purchased that land. And there is where the temple was to be built. Okay, he wanted to build the temple. The Lord said, you cannot build the temple because you shed much blood. So he didn't allow David to build it. He allowed Solomon to build it. But that didn't keep David from being involved in it. No, he hoarded materials and riches for its construction. He consulted with Solomon. He helped him work out the plans, all those types of things. But Solomon was the one who did it. All right, now. He brought the ark in, and the tabernacle and the ark into the city, okay, and placed it there in permanent residence. Okay. Though it's named the city of peace, Jerusalem, it's probably this opinion of some that it's been fought over more than any other city in the world. All right, so I don't know, but like I say, in the opinion of some, it has been. The peace of Jerusalem will be attained when the Prince of Peace rules from there. When do we believe that will happen? In the millennium. Okay. This psalm is well known. It's like the other ones. There's a portion of it. It's well known because it commands us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Okay. Now, this is a very simple outline here of 2 points. The first one is joy over worship. That's in verse 1 through 5. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. So we see that, right? And then the second point is prayer over Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, that they may prosper who love you. So we got that one. Any questions on that one? Okay, let's go to 123. 123. Okay. The descriptive image in this psalm is the relationship of the servant to the master and the maiden to her mistress. What does he say? Behold, as the eyes of the servants look to the hand of their master, and the eyes of the maid to the hand of her mistress. Now, you may or may not ever have been in a household where there's a domestic type of a servant in there. Now, when we first went to Togo, we went into the house of the missionary that started the work in Togo. Clayton and Helen Bond. He's a big man. Our Africans called him John Wayne. And that's what he was known. You pick up names when you go to other countries, and his was John Wayne. And they had a guy who worked for him, a household servant worked for them for many years. And when they retired, they bought him, a bought him some land and built him a house and set him up for retirement. It was the funniest thing. Miss Helen had a little bell right beside her, just a little bitty bell. And if something was needed, she picked up the bell and rang it. Now, you know, don't look at that as in a pejorative sense, because the English had already been there. They're in Ghana, right next door, and so that's just the way things were done. Okay, and they had a good relationship with Michael, but you could see him. He's watching her. As she reached out to get the bell, he was already coming. He didn't wait. He didn't wait for the bell to be rung. So this is the image that we're looking at. We have somebody here. He's referring to somebody here who has a relation, has a job, has a responsibility, and that's why he's looking at the hand of the master and she's looking at the hand of the mistress, okay? Because they would do signals with their hands. And this was, watching the hands was a sign of waiting for the master's bidding. And it reflects faithful service based on the relationship. The author feels compelled to call out to the master for mercy in times of need. What does it say in verse 3? Be gracious to us, O Lord, be gracious to us. This is a very simple outline as well. 2 points. First point is exalting God. You find that in verse 1 and verse 2. And then the second point is enlisting God's mercy. We find that in verse 3 and verse 4. Enlisting His mercy. Be gracious to us, O Lord, be gracious to us. Okay? All right, anything on that one? All right, y'all listening fast tonight. Psalm 124. Now, this psalm was written by David. It seems to have recalling the Lord's intervention in the affairs of Israel. They reflect his own experience, but maybe making allusions to the Lord's work during Exodus. Okay? He said, had it not been for the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say, had it not been for the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, they would have swallowed us alive. Okay? So, like I say, it may be reflecting his experience, because certainly there were people who were trying to swallow David up alive. He didn't, but maybe this is more in tune with the national experience. Okay? And it could be making allusions to the Lord's work during the Exodus as well. Okay? But you know, you can use these mental images to kind of stir up some thoughts along the way as it is. 2-point outline. First, God's protection, which we have already seen from what I've read in the very first 5 verses. Okay, and then God's provision. Okay, blessed be the Lord who has not given us to be torn by their teeth. And a soul has escaped as a bird out of the snare of the trapper. And then it goes on and lists out how the Lord has protected them, provided for them, and settled them. Okay? Anything there? Psalm 125. Psalm 125. Okay? This one is meaningful for Janet and I as well. And I don't know if she remembers why, but it is. But now the author and the circumstances here are unknown. Right? At the times of Hezekiah, remember Hezekiah? Okay, he was a godly king. In 2 Kings 18, 27 through 36, that's when they had the siege. The Syrians came up, right? The Syrians came up, put the siege on them, and Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, and the Lord rescued them, sent the angel, and rescued them. Or maybe it's in reference to Nehemiah, Nehemiah 6, 1 through 19, and that one is. That's where the story of the open letter. They're calling out to him 5 times. Come meet us at such and such a place and let us talk together. And he said, "No, I'm busy with a great work, and I don't have time to come down and bother with you." So they had the open letter. You know, it said that. So that may be that. Okay. Now this is this little psalm right here is a favorite to Brazilians. They made a song out of it. Do you remember it, baby? Aqueles que confiam no Senhor. São como monte de Sião, que não se abalam, mas permanecem para sempre. Well, that's it's the first verse in Portuguese, basically the first verse, but they had a tremendous chorus. Now dá, now dá. Sang Jesus, now dá. Yeah. So it's really catchy tune, like a 50s tune,
Yeah, yeah.
and a really catchy tune from the north to the south. We would sing it. Now dá, now dá. That's just one of those catch-all phrases. Now just means no, it's a negative, doesn't. Okay, dá means literally give. It says without Jesus, it doesn't give. It means doesn't work, it doesn't function. Okay, it doesn't pay out. And you can keep on stuff like that. But that one's every time I read that one, that song comes up. And the other one is Psalm 19 for me. It comes up in Portuguese on that. As palavras de minha boca e meditar de coração, agarrar-me ao Senhor. So that's 19, that one comes up for me as well, okay? Now, and basically what we're talking about is, security that the Lord gives to his people. Now, as a matter of fact, I just saw that. 2 point, the security of Jerusalem. Security of Jerusalem, find that in verse 1 and through 3. Those who confide in the Senor, or in the Lord, are like Mount Zion. They will never be moved. And then the second one is in verses 4 and 5, the spiritual purity of Jerusalem. A prayer for the Lord's blessing on those who have arranged their ways to please the Lord. Okay, anything on that one? 126. We're not going to hit all of them tonight. We'd be here another half hour if we did. We'll just go. Let's do another 10 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. Okay. 126. This is an anonymous song. It does appear that the context is the return of God's people from the Babylonian exile. But there are 3 separate returns. Okay. First one was under Zerubbabel, and you find that in Ezra 1 through 6, and that was around 538. And then there was another one under Ezra. You find that in Ezra 7 through 10. That's around 458. Okay. And then under Nehemiah chapter 1 and 2, and that was around 445. And the foundation of the second temple would have been laid. Okay. And that might be what's going by this. But they also had another time when they had the Feast of Tabernacles, and that was a big deal. That was a big deal for them. And so maybe it has reference to that. Okay. This one is kind of a parallel psalm with Psalm 85, if you want to check that one out. Here is the outline that we're going to offer to you. The first point is a testimony of restoration, and that's 1 through 3. When the Lord brought back the captive ones of Zion. Okay, we were like those who dreamed. So, that's just a beautiful mental image, is it not? People who've been slaves, right? All of a sudden they've been released, and they've been allowed to go back home. So that's so beautiful. Then in verse 4, we see that it's a prayer for restoration, prayer for riches. Okay, restore our captivity, Lord, as the streams in the south. Now, what's in the south of Israel?
Desert?
Yeah, it's called the Negev, N-E-G-E-V, and it's desert. But it's not always desert. There is time it has rain. And when rain, the wadis, brooks, are restored. So that's the image.
I saw a picture today that the hills are green right now from the rains.
Yeah. And so that's the picture that it has right here. That's what Kevin is talking about, right? And then the final point is the wisdom of righteousness. Okay, finding 5 and 6. Here we go. Here's another one. Those who sow in tears shall reap with joyful shouting. He who goes to and fro weeping, carrying his bag of seed, shall indeed come again with a shout of joy, bringing his sheaves with him. Now, my dad painted a picture. Well, he didn't paint it. He used colored pencils to do it. This verse for us, and I like to keep it around. I'm not sure where we have it right now, but oftentimes we display it. Man out in this field, broadcasting the seed. That's what we're looking at right here. Okay, anything on that one? All right, Psalm 127. Now the author here is Solomon. Okay, and what is Solomon famous for? Besides his wives, The temple, yeah, you know, certain things he's known for, wisdom, you know, a large family, shall we say? Yes, but he's also known for building the temple. Okay, he like I said, he worked in collaboration with his father to come up with the design and to stockpile the materials and stuff like that. So he built the temple. Okay, what does it say? Unless the Lord builds the house. Okay, here's somebody that's knowledgeable on this. Okay, the house that he built was the Lord's house, and it was spectacular beyond all reason for the time. Okay, the major message of God's being central to and sovereign in life sounds a lot like his message or portions of Ecclesiastes, and that's really what he's talking about, showing that the Lord is sovereign. Okay, it's the Lord who builds the house. If he's not building the house, they're laboring in vain who build it. Okay, unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. All right. This psalm illustrates my understanding of church work. Okay, it's essential to be working within the will of the Lord, to be aided by Him in all that you do. You need to be doing that. Simple outline here: God's sovereignty in everyday life, and then that's 1 and 2, and then God's sovereignty in family life. Behold, children are a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Okay? Sometimes we don't think it is, but it is. My oldest son always said this to me. He said, all 4 of his children were surprises. And he told me, he said, it seemed like every time I prayed for the Lord to bless me, I got another child. That's his words, yeah. Every time I prayed for the Lord to bless my family, I got another child. And so that's very biblical. It's biblical right here. And there you go. Okay? And so we're looking at that. All right. Anything else we're looking on here? Yeah, we're a little rushed. I'm trying to get as much as I can for you. Okay, 127. 128, excuse me. Now, 128, the author and circumstance of the psalm are known. It describes the benefits of walking in the will of the Lord. Okay, now this procures his blessings on work and family. Simple outline here. Basics of fearing the Lord. We find that in verse 1 and verse 4. How blessed is anyone who fears the Lord and walks in his way. Behold, for thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. Okay, so fearing the Lord brings blessing. Okay, and then you've got some list on here, some blessings for fearing the Lord. And that's in verse 2, 3, 5, and 6. In other words, the ones that I didn't mention earlier. Okay, you have the blessings in the present, found in verse 2, when you shall eat the fruit of your hands, all right? And verses 3, okay, talk about your wife being a fruitful vine. And then we have the blessings of the future, find that in 5 and 6. The Lord bless you from Zion, and may you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. So this is a psalm of blessing. Okay? Now, Psalm 129. While the author and circumstances are unknown, verse 4 indicates a release from captivity. This would likely be the Babylonian captivity because of the reference to Zion. Now we find an outline here is that the Israel's freedom is celebrated. We find that in verses 1 through 4. Okay, and you know, I looked at this. Maybe this could have been Egypt, but they weren't settled in Zion when they came out of Egypt. Zion was yet to come, 40 years down the road. So, but you look at the plowers plowed on my back. They lengthened their furrows. So that's a tough one. Okay. So Israel's freedom is celebrated in verses 1 through 4, and then Israel's foe is reviled in verses 5 through 8. May all who hate Zion be put to shame and turned backwards. Let them be like grass upon the housetops, which withers before it grows up. You know, in the houses they would put a layer of dirt, kind of like having a sod roof, and it was deep enough for grass to germinate and come up, but not deep enough to support it when the sun would bear downward. So that's what we're looking at right here. Okay? Anything on that one? Psalm 130. The author's circumstances are unknown. So it's a psalm of penitence. Penitence? What is penitence? Repenting. You're calling on the Lord to forgive you, humbling yourself. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of them. This is the sixth one. And these psalms of repentance are Psalm 6, 32, 38, 51, 102, 130, this is ours right here, and then 143. Okay, now here's an outline. Urgent prayer of the psalmist, verse 1 and 2. A magnified forgiveness of God in 3 and 4. Okay, and it's good. Yeah. If you, Lord, should mark iniquities, O Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, that you may be feared. Now the third one is waiting in patience of the psalmist, and that's 5 and 6, and then the last one is the unique hope of Israel in 7 through 8. 131 is really short. Okay, so I'll just give you a 2-point outline on that one. David's the author. Personal testimony in verse 1 through 2. And I thought that Jerry did a pretty good job when he's speaking about the weaned child on that one, okay? A weaned child is not trying to get mom's attention so he might breastfeed. He's just content to be in her presence. So that's what we're looking at right there. And then the last verse is an exhortation. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forever. Okay. Yeah. I think we'll just stop right there. Unless y'all want to keep on going. We got 4 more. Well, I hope that this study of Psalms has been profitable to all. Sometimes you get in a rut and you need something to kind of pick you up and put you in another part of the road where the going is a little bit different. And the last 2 years, I think our January Bible study has kind of been like that. We've kind of approached things from a different angle, in a different way. There's some things in here that I wish they'd have kind of narrowed it down, not giving you as much territory to go over. But you got a book, and you can go through that at your own time and make that profitable to you. And it's ambitious to think that we're going to be able to do 15 Psalms in 30 minutes. It's just doesn't happen. But I appreciated the selection that we did, and I learned some things. Just like Jeremiah. Jeremiah's never been on high on my list of priorities as far as enjoyable reading. But the fellow that did the study on Jeremiah last year, I felt he did a really good job. And I think this is profitable. I hope it's been profitable to you.